To learn about the off-grid lifestyle and to be inspired to live your dreams, click subscribe so you don't miss anything. Hit the bell notification. So I decided to do a little bit of work on the chicken coop today. When the chickens go in there and there's a noise or a ruckus or something going on in there, I'm sure it's just the chickens most of the time fighting with each other, fighting over the best roosting spot. But sometimes I think, man, I should go in there and check. That means I got to crawl around inside over there to open the door. Well, I decided I was going to put windows in it. And so I got two windows. I got one here, one here. So what I used was that material that I used for my porch roof. It's just a clear PVC plastic that's UV resistant, hail resistant. It's worked really good for our porch. I got 3 scrap pieces, so I thought I'd just use 2 of these scrap pieces. I also added more roosting posts. I know you're gonna have a really tough time seeing this, but maybe you can see that I've used grapevines right here so they can roost. Chickens like to roost. And so I had some grapevines out there. It's free wood, and they choke off the trees, kill the trees. I've been in the woods all winter long, cutting grapevines off the trees, and they just kind of dangle there. Well, I trim these up, and they make great roosts. Chickens love them, and it gives the chickens this natural feeling that they're actually on nature. A lot of people just use wood or dowel rods or something, but this has flexible stuff to it, and it bounces a little bit. I'm sure you've seen them before. This tree here, I'm about ready to show you, was just about suffocated. It's a walnut tree. It sits right in the middle of our yard. It's the only tree we have in the middle of the yard. The rest of them are out in the woods. And Carolyn has done everything to save this tree. And so you can see it was just completely surrounded. And you can see it just chews into the bark. So she did this last spring. So we use that for the chicken roost. And I added some more because we got more chickens going into there. And I wanted to make sure they had enough room. So now I've got it all spaced out correctly. It should work out pretty good. So in yesterday's question and answer video, I was explaining to you why we weren't going to get rabbits. And if you want to know, just go back to yesterday's video. You can check it out. It was just question and answer video, but there was something I wanted to say in that video. I just plumb forgot. You can get a Cornish cross hen. Now, Cornish cross hens are bred specifically for meat production. It's a very weak breed. They don't live very long. And you have to butcher them around 12 to 14 weeks. Now, the thing about these Cornish cross hens is they'll die of a heart attack. They just don't live long. Most of the meat go into the breast, which is where you want the meat because it's just a huge hunk of meat. You can buy these Cornish cross hens for $2 a piece if you buy over 25 of them. So you get them as little chicks, you order them online, they come in, and you raise them. The Cornish cross hens, like I said, are a very weak breed. So they're not very adaptable to winter and summer. So that means you get them in the fall and the spring. That's about the only time you can get them, but you can't hang on to them too long. The thing is when they come in, they're little babies, and you got to keep little babies at 95 degrees temperature. And I think it's, I don't know, every week it goes down 5 degrees, so next week's 85 and 80 and on down. So as I said, you buy them for $2 a piece. Well, then you raise them for 12 to 14 weeks. That's another $2 in feed costs. We know because that's what we have spent on these guys. At the 12-week mark, I made a video explaining how much money we spent on food. So now you have a 10-pound chicken, 10 to 12-pound chicken that costs $4. And most of it is breast meat. So there's not a lot of scrap. The 10 pounds is actually butchered meat. That's a lot of meat for very inexpensive. So what we plan on doing is we're gonna get these guys producing eggs. Those guys up there are little ones. They'll be of age that they can mix in with these guys. And then we'll go on, I don't know, July time frame, August time frame, we'll order the Cornish cross hens. Then we can raise them in 90-degree temperature in July. Think about that. July temperature is going to be 90 degrees, it's going to be hot. That's when the temperature has to be hot for these chickens. And as the temperature starts dropping, so you get into the October time frame, that's when you start butchering. Perfect timing because you can't get into winter because it's going to be too cold. You could probably push it into November. I mean, it doesn't get too terribly cold then. But when you start getting below freezing temperatures, it's pretty dangerous for these guys. Now, you're going to have 25 of these guys, and we only have a little bitty freezer that we can put them into. So we wouldn't have a storage area. So what we're going to do is about 10 weeks old, we'll start butchering, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 a day, because that's about all we can in that time frame, in a day. So in the morning, I get up, you butcher a few, Or the other thing we can do is we can butcher them, put them in our cooler, ice cooler, and the next day we can start processing them for canning. And so every few days you would just butcher 4 or 5 of them until you got them all done. And then that way you don't get past that 14-week mark where they start dying from heart failure. They'll get where they can't walk. I've done this before. I didn't do 25 of them. I think I had, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people defeather the chicken, put it in boiling water, and so then you defeather. That is a terrible job. It stinks, it's horrible. I don't like it. So I don't do it. I skin it just like you would skin a rabbit. You just skin it off. The feathers and everything comes right off. It's really easy to do. And it takes so little time to do it this way. We don't know if we can actually do it this year. We hope we can. We want to get these other guys raised and into here as much as possible. We don't want to have all kinds of different aged chickens running around here because it's just really hard to keep up with them. When you get new chickens, you don't want to mix them up because the new ones might have a disease or something, and then you lose that flock and your older flock. That would be terrible. You don't want to do that. So you have to keep them separated for 2 weeks to a month. The other thing is the age difference. We got 4 different ages. When you start mixing these guys with those guys, these guys just terrorize them. Just terrorize them. They're frightened. The little ones are just frightened all day. We may not be able to do it this year. We're hoping that we can come up with a plan to do it. The other thing we have to consider is we probably would have to build or buy another coop to hold 25 more chickens for 14 weeks. Well, with lumber prices so high, it would be very expensive to do. So that means we're starting to look at sheds and different things. But the one thing we don't want to do is overextend ourselves. We've talked about buying goats. Of course, yesterday's video, we talked about rabbits, and we've talked about lots of different things. But we want to make sure that we have one process down, whatever that process is. In this case, it's chickens, before we start the next thing. We fear that if we get too many things going all at once, that we will fail at all of them. And now we feel like that we've got a good start where we can actually start breeding next year and eating those chickens. Of course, these chickens aren't meat chickens. They do both. I mean, that's the thing is if you look up chickens, you'll find that they're good for meat and eggs and production, just a whole variety of things. So they're just a good flexible chicken, these guys are. So I feel like we're in really good shape for food production, hitting it hard next year. This year we're experimenting with the garden. It seems like everything's going pretty good. We're getting the right amount of sunlight. Next year we're going to probably start a huge section of corn. So we intend to put our corn right here in this field. But it has a significant disadvantage. On this side, where the sun comes up in the morning, are trees. And on this side, where the sun goes down in the evening, are trees. What we're going to have to do is clear this up. Right now, it's overforested anyways. I mean, if you look at it, you can't even walk through it. I'm going to walk down in the woods, so it might be dark, but I like showing you guys the woods. It's so nice down here. I don't like fear-mongering on this channel. I criticize it quite a bit, but there are times where I think it's just good advice maybe I could provide. I don't know. I used to run my own company. I traveled all over the country helping companies develop systems to improve their quality. And I worked for companies that supplied products to Chrysler and Chevy and Ford. That was my primary customer base. These companies were very stable companies. They had systems in place where, for example, Chrysler would just put into the computer what kind of orders they wanted, and the company would get up that morning and start producing. I called up one of my companies and I said, hey, I'm scheduled to come to your organization and do an audit. Can I come up next week? And he says, no. He said, this morning we got up and Chrysler didn't place an order. What? How can they not place an order? They produce 100 cars a day off this one assembly line. How can they not place an order? We don't know. I hung up the phone and I looked over at my wife and I said, we're in trouble. And we immediately started preparing right then for the financial situation we were getting ready to get hit with. If Chrysler is not buying product, my customers are not going to hire me. That's when we started our little homestead and we got things going. In 2008, sure enough, I mean, I can't remember. It didn't feel like that long. I want to say it was only a week later, but it may have been a month or two. And Chrysler went for the bailout. I guess all 3 companies went for the bailout. It doesn't matter. I'm not trying to give you a historical lesson. I'm trying to give a little bit of input here. My ex-wife and I, my daughter, survived very well with our little homestead. We had ducks, chickens, goats, and sheep, and we tried rabbits. But it really helped us get through the economic crisis. So 2 years later, in 2010, one of my non-automotive companies hired me, and we really got back on our feet at that point. So the chickens and that kind of thing really helped us through it. It was incredible. I mean, we just made an amazing survival. Well, for some reason, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist or fearmonger, but for some reason I have this feeling that we're heading towards a problem in our financial markets. I'm not a financial expert, it's just, I feel it. More and more information sounding similar to it did back there in 2008. Recessions, inflation, and all those crazy terms are starting to surface again. So I'm suggesting, if you haven't started your off-grid thinking, I would highly recommend to start thinking about what you may need. Do you have enough money? Do you need gas? What do you need? And start focusing on how you can supplement that. Are you going to be able to afford the electric bill? Well, if not, can solar panels help you out? Again, I don't want to fearmonger. I just want to throw it out there that, you know, I've been really hammering home that I want you to live your dream. But then also, this is an off-grid channel. And I feel quite prepared for any crisis that could happen. And it makes me feel really happy and free. And I don't worry about things like I had to back in 2008. So I hope I can inspire you to start thinking about what you would do if something went wrong. Thanks for watching.